Have you ever wondered if the biggest mistake people make when trying to lower their blood sugar is focusing on what they need to stop eating instead of what they should start eating? Most people are told to fear carbohydrates, avoid them whenever possible, and believe that cutting them out is the only path to better glucose control. But after years of working with patients, I can tell you that this is not where the real transformation begins. The fastest and most lasting improvements I have seen did not come from removing entire food groups. They came from adding the right foods that work with the body's natural biology. I have cared for hundreds of people who watched their blood sugar readings improve within days simply by making a few strategic additions to their meals. Even more encouraging, many of them continued maintaining healthy glucose levels for months, and in some cases years, while reducing their dependence on medication under the guidance of their physician. That is exactly what I want to show you today. In this video, I will walk you through 10 remarkable foods that support your body's own ability to manage blood sugar. Each one works in a different but important way to improve your metabolism, restore insulin sensitivity at the cellular level, and help your body regain the balance it was designed to maintain. The goal is not just lowering your blood sugar for a few days. The goal is helping you create improvements that are natural, practical, and sustainable over the long term. Before we begin, I have one small request. If you enjoy learning how your body actually works, instead of simply being told what medication to take, make sure you subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and tell me your fasting blood sugar from this week in the comments below. I genuinely read those comments, and the ages, questions, and experiences you share help guide the topics I cover in future videos. Because my goal is to answer the questions that matter most to people living with these challenges every day. Now, let me explain something that rarely gets discussed during a brief doctor's appointment. High blood sugar does not usually begin with sugar itself. It almost always begins with a hormone called insulin. Think of insulin as a messenger carrying an important key. Its job is to unlock the door of your body's cells so glucose, the sugar circulating in your bloodstream, can move inside where it belongs and be converted into energy. That process is happening every moment of every day when your metabolism is healthy. But after years of repeated blood sugar spikes, processed foods, poor sleep, chronic stress, and metabolic strain, those cells gradually stop responding the way they should. Insulin keeps knocking on the door, but the cells become less willing to answer. We call this insulin resistance. Your pancreas responds by producing even more insulin in an attempt to force glucose into the cells. Yet despite all of that extra effort, blood sugar often continues to rise. At that point, the usual solution becomes adding medications that stimulate even more insulin activity inside a body that is already overwhelmed by excessive insulin. This is not necessarily because anyone wants you to stay unhealthy. It is simply how our healthcare system has evolved. Medical appointments are often short, medications are faster to prescribe, and there is rarely enough time to explain how deeply food communicates with your hormones on a biochemical level. That conversation is one of the most powerful tools you can have, and today I want to give you the time that many people never receive. My name is Dr. William, and every food we discuss today serves one of three important purposes. Some of them slow the rate at which sugar enters your bloodstream. Others reduce the chronic inflammation that prevents your cells from responding properly to insulin. And some directly support the insulin receptors themselves, allowing your body to use the insulin it already produces much more effectively. The wonderful part is that you do not need to change everything overnight. There is no need to completely redesign your diet tomorrow morning. Instead, add these foods gradually over the next couple of weeks. As each one becomes part of your routine, they begin working together, building on one another until their combined effect becomes far greater than any single food could achieve alone. Let's begin with the first one. The first food may surprise you because it is often overlooked, yet it is one of the most affordable and powerful tools available for improving blood sugar naturally. I am talking about fenugreek seeds. These small, golden brown seeds are inexpensive, easy to find in the spice section of most grocery stores, and despite their simple appearance, they contain remarkable nutritional properties. Many people walk right past them without realizing they are ignoring one of the most effective natural supports for glucose control, often for less money than the cost of a morning cup of coffee. What makes fenugreek so valuable is its exceptionally high concentration of a soluble fiber called galactomannan. When these seeds absorb water inside your stomach, they expand into a thick gel-like substance. That gel performs an important mechanical function. It slows the speed at which food leaves your stomach and enters your small intestine. As a result, carbohydrates are broken down and absorbed much more gradually. Instead of releasing a large amount of glucose into your bloodstream all at once, the sugar enters slowly and steadily. Your blood sugar rises gently rather than sharply, and because the rise is smaller, your pancreas does not have to release an overwhelming surge of insulin. This creates a much calmer metabolic response. Fenugreek offers another fascinating benefit as well. It naturally contains an amino acid that encourages your pancreas to release insulin more efficiently, while also helping your muscle cells absorb glucose more effectively. In other words, it supports both sides of healthy blood sugar regulation. Over the years, I have watched patients incorporate this one simple habit into their morning routine and begin seeing noticeable improvements in their fasting glucose readings within the first week or two. While every individual responds differently, the consistency of these early improvements has been impressive enough that fenugreek has become one of the first recommendations I make for people working to improve insulin sensitivity naturally. Using it is surprisingly simple. Measure 1 teaspoon of whole fenugreek seeds and place them into a glass of water before you go to bed. Allow them to soak overnight. By morning, the seeds will have softened considerably. Drink the soaking water first, then eat the softened seeds before breakfast. If you find their slightly bitter flavor difficult to enjoy, you can grind the seeds into a powder and mix about half a teaspoon into plain yogurt or sprinkle it over eggs or another protein-rich breakfast. Begin with a smaller amount if you have never used fenugreek before, because its fiber is very effective, and your digestive system may need several days to adapt comfortably before increasing your intake naturally. The second food is probably already sitting somewhere in your kitchen, but there is one important detail that most people never hear. Not every type of cinnamon offers the same advantages. The variety commonly sold in many grocery stores is called cassia cinnamon. While it has a pleasant flavor, it also contains a natural compound known as coumarin. In small amounts, this is generally not a concern, but taking cassia cinnamon every day over a long period can place unnecessary stress on the liver. That is why I consistently recommend a different variety to my patients. Look for Ceylon cinnamon, often labeled as true cinnamon. It has a milder, slightly sweeter taste, contains far less coumarin, and is considered the better choice if you plan to make it part of your daily routine. What makes cinnamon so interesting is not simply its flavor, but the collection of natural plant compounds it contains, particularly polyphenols. These compounds appear to improve the way insulin performs its job. Think of your insulin receptors as tiny locks on the surface of your cells. When those locks become less responsive, glucose remains trapped in the bloodstream instead of moving into the cells where it belongs. The polyphenols in cinnamon help those receptors respond more efficiently, allowing glucose to enter the cells with less resistance. At the same time, cinnamon gently slows the rate at which food leaves your stomach after a meal, creating a steadier release of glucose into your bloodstream instead of a sudden spike. That combination makes it a surprisingly effective nutritional tool. Research has repeatedly supported these observations. Investigators within the USDA Human Nutrition Research Program found that consuming less than half a teaspoon of cinnamon each day produced meaningful improvements in fasting blood glucose among adults living with type 2 diabetes. While cinnamon is certainly not a replacement for healthy eating or medical care, it represents one of those simple daily habits that can quietly produce meaningful results over time. If you already have cinnamon in your kitchen, you may be much closer to improving your blood sugar than you realize. The key is simply choosing the right kind. A practical amount is between 1/4 and 1/2 teaspoon of Ceylon cinnamon each day. Stir it into your morning oatmeal, blend it into a smoothie, or add it to your coffee if you enjoy the flavor. I especially recommend pairing cinnamon with meals that contain carbohydrates, because that is exactly when you want to support your insulin receptors and slow the digestion of glucose. It is a small adjustment that requires almost no effort, yet it works alongside your body's own biology rather than against it. The third food is one that receives far less attention than it deserves, and I encourage you to pay especially close attention because it may be the most overlooked item in this entire discussion. I am talking about broccoli sprouts, not mature broccoli. That distinction matters much more than most people realize. Those tiny 3-day-old sprouts contain dramatically higher concentrations of one remarkable compound called sulforaphane. In fact, broccoli sprouts may contain 50 to 100 times more sulforaphane than fully grown broccoli. If you substitute one for the other, assuming they provide the same benefits, you miss much of what makes these sprouts so valuable. Sulforaphane works differently from the other foods we have discussed because it targets one of the hidden drivers of elevated fasting blood sugar, your liver. Throughout the night, while you are asleep, your liver naturally produces glucose to provide your body with energy. Under normal circumstances, this is a healthy and carefully regulated process. But when insulin resistance develops, the liver often begins producing far more glucose than your body actually needs. That excessive overnight production is one of the biggest reasons many people wake up with unexpectedly high fasting blood sugar despite not eating anything for hours. They often assume they did something wrong the night before, when in reality their liver is simply receiving the wrong metabolic signals. This is where sulforaphane becomes especially valuable. Research published in 2017 by scientists at Lund University in Sweden examined concentrated sulforaphane in individuals with type 2 diabetes. The results demonstrated measurable reductions in fasting blood glucose, with the greatest improvements occurring in participants whose diabetes had been the most difficult to control. That finding is particularly encouraging because it suggests this natural compound may be especially helpful for those struggling with persistent insulin resistance. Fortunately, adding broccoli sprouts to your routine is both simple and inexpensive. Many people grow them at home in nothing more than a glass jar on the kitchen counter, while others purchase them fresh in the produce section of the grocery store. A small handful, roughly 1/4 cup several days each week, is generally enough to obtain their benefits. Add them to salads, sandwiches, wraps, or grain bowls. One thing you should avoid is cooking them at high temperatures, because excessive heat destroys much of the sulforaphane that makes them so valuable. Eating them raw or only very lightly warmed allows you to preserve their full nutritional potential. If you notice a pattern developing, that is intentional. Every food we have covered so far is working quietly behind the scenes. Some are slowing the absorption of glucose before it reaches your bloodstream. Others are improving how your cells respond to insulin or helping your liver produce a healthier amount of glucose overnight. None of these foods rely on dramatic changes or extreme restrictions. Instead, they gradually restore the normal biological processes your body was designed to perform, and remarkably, we have only discussed the first 3 foods. The next group of foods may be even more practical because they fit naturally into meals you are probably already eating. Small changes at breakfast, lunch, and dinner can create surprisingly meaningful improvements in blood sugar without making you feel deprived. If someone you care about is also trying to improve their glucose levels or manage insulin resistance, I encourage you to share this information with them. These are the kinds of nutritional principles that deserve far more attention than they often receive, and understanding how they work can completely change the way people think about food and long-term metabolic health. The fourth food is avocado. Many people still avoid avocados because they focus only on the calorie content, assuming that all fats should be limited. Unfortunately, that outdated belief has prevented countless people from enjoying one of the most blood sugar-friendly foods available. The majority of the fat found in an avocado is monounsaturated fat, the same heart-healthy type found in extra virgin olive oil. Combined with its generous amount of fiber, avocado changes the way your body handles an entire meal. Instead of allowing carbohydrates such as rice, potatoes, or toast to be digested rapidly, the healthy fat and fiber slow the digestive process, creating a much steadier release of glucose into your bloodstream. Rather than producing a sharp spike followed by a crash, your blood sugar rises gradually and remains much more stable, giving both your pancreas and your cells a far easier job. One of the reasons I appreciate avocado so much is that its benefits extend beyond a single meal. Research has shown that diets rich in monounsaturated fats can gradually improve insulin sensitivity, allowing your cells to respond more efficiently when insulin delivers its message. Over time, this means your body requires less insulin to manage the same amount of glucose. In my experience, avocado is also one of the easiest healthy habits for people to maintain because it naturally increases fullness. When a meal leaves you satisfied for longer, you are much less likely to find yourself reaching for processed snacks an hour later. That simple shift alone can make a meaningful difference in keeping blood sugar stable throughout the day. A practical serving is about half an avocado each day. Slice it over eggs at breakfast, spread it onto whole grain toast, or add it to a salad that includes a healthy source of carbohydrates. Every time you pair avocado with starches, you help soften the rise in blood sugar that usually follows those foods. Rather than removing carbohydrates completely, you are teaching your body to process them in a steadier, healthier way. The fifth food is chia seeds. They may be tiny, but they are among the most powerful sources of nutrition you can add to your meals. If you have ever watched chia seeds soak in water and transform into a thick, pudding-like texture, you have already witnessed the secret behind how they support blood sugar. Inside your digestive system, the exact same process takes place. Chia seeds are packed with soluble fiber, and when that fiber comes into contact with liquid in your stomach, it forms a thick gel that surrounds the carbohydrates in your meal. As a result, digestion slows significantly, and glucose enters your bloodstream gradually, instead of all at once. That steady release helps prevent the sharp rise in blood sugar that is often followed by an equally dramatic drop, leaving people feeling tired, hungry, and craving more sugar shortly after eating. Chia seeds offer another important advantage. They are an excellent source of plant-based omega-3 fatty acids, nutrients that help reduce the chronic, low-grade inflammation commonly associated with insulin resistance. Inflammation quietly interferes with the communication between insulin and your cells. As inflammation decreases, those cellular signals begin functioning more effectively, allowing your body to respond to insulin the way it was designed to. Blood sugar control is not simply about reducing glucose intake, it is equally about restoring healthy communication inside the body. Adding chia seeds to your routine is easy. 1 to 2 tablespoons each day is generally enough. Stir them into yogurt, blend them into a smoothie, or simply mix them into a glass of water with a squeeze of fresh lemon juice. Allow the mixture to sit for about 10 minutes before drinking, so the seeds have time to absorb the liquid and form their gel. Also remember to drink enough water throughout the day because fiber works best when your body is properly hydrated. The sixth food is fatty fish, particularly salmon and mackerel. Unlike the foods we have discussed so far, these do not primarily work by slowing digestion. Instead, they address one of the underlying reasons insulin resistance develops in the first place. Chronic inflammation is one of the major drivers of poor insulin sensitivity. When inflammation remains active for years, even at low levels, it disrupts the normal signals that allow insulin to communicate with your cells. The result is that glucose remains in the bloodstream longer than it should. Salmon and mackerel are exceptionally rich in 2 important omega-3 fatty acids, known as EPA and DHA. These nutrients are among the most extensively studied natural anti-inflammatory compounds available. By helping calm inflammatory activity throughout the body, they support healthier cell membranes and improve the performance of insulin receptors. As those receptors regain their responsiveness, glucose can move into the cells more efficiently, helping stabilize blood sugar naturally. Over the past 15 years in clinical practice, I have consistently noticed a similar pattern among patients who regularly eat fatty fish. Those who include it in their meals at least twice each week often experience steadier blood sugar readings, healthier blood pressure, and improved overall metabolic health compared with those who rarely consume it. While no single food provides a complete solution, fatty fish repeatedly proves to be one of the strongest nutritional allies for long-term health. Aim for 2 servings each week, with each portion roughly the size of the palm of your hand. Wild salmon is an excellent choice, but mackerel, sardines and herring are equally valuable options. They can be baked, grilled, or even purchased canned if that better fits your budget. In fact, canned sardines and canned mackerel are among the most affordable yet nutrient-dense foods available, making them an outstanding option for improving blood sugar without increasing grocery costs. The seventh food is walnuts. Among all the different varieties of nuts, walnuts are usually the first recommendation I make because they provide benefits that extend well beyond blood sugar alone. They support both insulin function and the health of your blood vessels at the same time. This is especially important because the delicate inner lining of your blood vessels, known as the endothelium, is often one of the earliest parts of the body affected by persistently high blood sugar. Walnuts are naturally rich in polyunsaturated fats, including plant-based omega-3 fatty acids, similar to those found in chia seeds. These healthy fats help maintain the flexibility and function of the blood vessels, while also improving the body's response to insulin. In addition, walnuts provide a balanced combination of healthy fat, protein, and fiber. Together, these nutrients slow digestion and reduce the rise in blood sugar after meals. Studies have also shown that walnuts may help lower fasting insulin levels, giving us another indication that the pancreas does not need to work as hard when these foods become part of a regular eating pattern. One of the simplest ways to enjoy walnuts is by replacing processed snacks with them. Instead of reaching for crackers, chips, or cookies during the afternoon, choose a small handful of walnuts. That single substitution changes the nutritional profile of your snack completely. Rather than triggering a rapid rise in blood sugar, you provide your body with nutrients that support stable glucose levels while helping you stay satisfied until your next meal. A serving is approximately 1/4 cup, or about 7 to 10 whole walnuts. Choose raw or dry roasted varieties whenever possible, and avoid those coated with sugar, honey, or candy coatings, which can easily cancel many of the benefits. Remember, the goal is not to add walnuts on top of unhealthy snacks. The greatest improvement comes when walnuts replace processed foods, allowing your body to experience a far steadier and healthier metabolic response throughout the day. The eighth food is eggs, and I mean whole eggs, including the yolk. For many years, people were encouraged to avoid egg yolks because they were told cholesterol was the greatest threat to heart health. As a result, countless breakfasts shifted toward sugary cereals, low-fat pastries, and heavily processed toast spreads that seemed healthier on paper but created far greater problems for blood sugar. Fortunately, we now understand the science much better. A whole egg is naturally rich in high-quality protein and healthy fats while containing almost no carbohydrates. Because of that unique combination, eggs have very little direct impact on your blood glucose. Instead of causing a rapid spike, they provide steady nourishment that helps your body remain satisfied for hours. One of the most fascinating benefits of eggs is something researchers refer to as the second meal effect. This simply means that what you eat for breakfast influences how your body handles your next meal later in the day. When you begin your morning with 2 or 3 whole eggs instead of a bowl of cereal or slices of toast, your blood sugar often remains steadier not only after breakfast, but also through lunchtime. Your body approaches the next meal from a much more balanced metabolic state, resulting in a smaller glucose rise afterward. The protein and healthy fats also reduce hunger hormones, making those mid-morning cravings for cookies, muffins, or vending machine snacks much less intense. Over the years, this has become one of the simplest breakfast changes I recommend. Patients who replace highly processed breakfast foods with eggs frequently notice improvements in their morning glucose readings within a relatively short period. It is an easy habit to maintain because it is satisfying, affordable, and incredibly versatile. Whether you prefer scrambled eggs, boiled eggs prepared ahead of time, or an omelet filled with vegetables such as spinach, you are creating a breakfast that works with your metabolism instead of against it. Add half an avocado from earlier to complete the meal, and you have built one of the most blood sugar-friendly breakfasts you can prepare. The ninth food is apple cider vinegar, and this is perhaps the quickest way to observe a measurable difference if you monitor your blood sugar at home. Many people are surprised by how rapidly it can influence glucose levels after a meal. The key active compound inside apple cider vinegar is acetic acid. This natural acid works through two important mechanisms at the same time. First, it slows the rate at which food leaves your stomach, giving carbohydrates more time to be digested gradually instead of entering the bloodstream all at once. Second, it improves your muscles' ability to take glucose out of the bloodstream and use it as fuel, helping reduce the amount of sugar that continues circulating after a meal. The evidence supporting this approach is remarkably strong. Research led by Dr. Carol Johnston at Arizona State University demonstrated that consuming approximately 1 tablespoon of vinegar before eating a carbohydrate-rich meal reduced the post-meal blood sugar increase by around 20% in individuals with insulin resistance. That level of improvement is significant, especially considering how inexpensive and widely available apple cider vinegar is. Sometimes the most effective nutritional strategies are also the simplest. To use it safely, mix 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar into a full glass of water and drink it about 10 to 15 minutes before your largest carbohydrate-containing meal. Diluting it is extremely important because drinking vinegar straight can irritate your throat and gradually damage the enamel protecting your teeth. There is one more point worth emphasizing. If you already take medications that lower blood sugar, particularly insulin or other glucose-lowering drugs, discuss this strategy with your healthcare provider before adding it consistently. Combining vinegar with medication may reduce blood sugar more quickly than expected, so your physician may need to monitor your readings and adjust treatment if necessary. The 10th and final food brings us back to the central message of this entire discussion, because it clearly demonstrates that carbohydrates themselves are not the enemy. Lentils are, in fact, a carbohydrate-rich food, yet they can actively help improve blood sugar control. The reason lies in their unique nutritional structure. Lentils contain resistant starch, abundant soluble fiber, and a generous amount of plant protein. Together, these nutrients slow digestion dramatically, allowing glucose to enter your bloodstream gradually over several hours instead of flooding it within minutes. Lentils also produce the same second meal effect we discussed earlier with eggs. Enjoying lentils at lunch often helps stabilize blood sugar well into the evening because your metabolism continues processing that meal slowly and efficiently. From a clinical perspective, replacing refined carbohydrates such as white rice or white potatoes with lentils several times each week is one of the most reliable dietary strategies I have seen for lowering A1C, the laboratory measurement that reflects your average blood sugar over approximately 3 months. Rather than eliminating carbohydrates entirely, you are simply choosing a form that works in harmony with your body's natural physiology. A practical serving is between 1/2 and 1 cup of cooked lentils a few times each week. They work beautifully in soups, stews, or cold salads, dressed with extra virgin olive oil and a splash of the apple cider vinegar we discussed earlier. Lentils are inexpensive, highly satisfying, rich in nutrients, and capable of stretching a meal while supporting healthier blood sugar at the same time. Let me share the story of someone I will call Donna. She was 63 years old, recently retired, and understandably worried when she first came to see me. Her fasting blood sugar was consistently around 180 milligrams per deciliter, and her physician had begun discussing the possibility of adding a second diabetes medication. What frightened her even more was her family history. She had watched her own mother struggle with diabetes for years, eventually losing several toes and later much of her eyesight because of complications from the disease. Donna did not want to follow that same path if there was another option. Instead of placing her on an extremely restrictive eating plan, we focused on improving the quality of her meals. Breakfast changed from sugary cereal to eggs paired with avocado. Before larger meals containing carbohydrates, she drank a tablespoon of diluted apple cider vinegar. White rice was gradually replaced with lentils. Afternoon cookies became a small handful of walnuts. Fatty fish appeared on her dinner menu twice each week. Ceylon cinnamon became part of her morning coffee, and broccoli sprouts were added to sandwiches and salads whenever possible. Within the very first week, her fasting blood sugar readings began moving in the right direction. Over the following 3 months, while working closely with her physician, her numbers improved enough that she was able to discontinue the second medication that had once seemed inevitable. Her A1C gradually dropped from the diabetic range toward normal levels. Most importantly, those improvements were not temporary. 2 years later, she continued maintaining healthy glucose control through the same sustainable habits. She did not starve herself, and she did not eliminate every carbohydrate from her diet. She simply gave her body the nutrients it needed to perform the job it was designed to do. The reason Donna's story matters is because it illustrates the deeper principle behind every food we have discussed today. None of these foods works by forcing your body into an unnatural state or by asking you to live with constant hunger. Instead, each one supports a different part of the same biological system. The fiber-rich foods slow the release of glucose, so your pancreas never has to respond with an overwhelming surge of insulin. The fatty fish, walnuts, and chia seeds help calm the chronic inflammation that interferes with insulin signaling. Cinnamon and apple cider vinegar improve the way your insulin receptors respond, making it easier for glucose to leave your bloodstream and enter your cells where it belongs. Meal after meal, day after day, these small improvements begin working together. Gradually, the cells that had stopped responding to insulin begin functioning more normally again. That is what improving insulin resistance truly means at the cellular level. Your body slowly regains the ability to regulate blood sugar naturally instead of constantly struggling against it. That is also why Donna continued seeing healthy numbers long after those habits became part of her everyday life. Before we finish, there is one very important safety point I want to make. If you currently use insulin or medications known as sulfonylureas, which are among the older medications prescribed for type 2 diabetes, these nutritional changes may lower your blood sugar more effectively than you expect. As your body becomes more responsive to insulin, the medication dose that once seemed appropriate may become too strong, increasing the risk of low blood sugar. That is why I strongly encourage you to make these dietary improvements while monitoring your glucose carefully and working closely with your healthcare provider. As your numbers improve, your physician can safely adjust your medications if necessary. Never stop or reduce any prescribed medication on your own. Instead, bring this list of foods to your next appointment and use it as the starting point for a conversation about improving your metabolic health together. Now let me leave you with a simple plan that you can begin putting into practice immediately. Tomorrow morning, replace your usual cereal or toast with 2 or 3 whole eggs and half an avocado. That one breakfast alone can influence your blood sugar for the rest of the day. Before you go to bed tonight, soak 1 teaspoon of fenugreek seeds in a glass of water so they are ready for tomorrow morning. Pick up some Ceylon cinnamon, not cassia, and begin adding about 1/4 teaspoon each day to your coffee, oatmeal, or smoothie. Before your largest carbohydrate-containing meal tomorrow, drink 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar diluted in a full glass of water about 15 minutes beforehand. Finally, over the next week, replace white rice or white potatoes with lentils at least twice, and make room for fatty fish on your dinner menu 2 evenings during the week. Do not feel pressured to make every change at once. Introduce them gradually over the next couple of weeks. Remember, this approach is not about taking away the foods you enjoy. It is about adding foods that help protect your metabolism while allowing you to build healthier habits that you can realistically maintain for years. One question I hear again and again comes from people who tell me something that seems completely confusing. They say, "Doctor, my highest blood sugar reading isn't after dinner or dessert. It's the very first reading I take in the morning before I've eaten anything." If that sounds familiar, you are certainly not alone. Many people assume that because they have fasted all night, their glucose should naturally be lower by morning. Yet the opposite often happens. The reason lies in a process taking place inside your liver while you sleep. During the early morning hours, your liver can begin releasing extra glucose into your bloodstream, especially if insulin resistance is already present. Understanding why that happens is one of the missing pieces that helps explain stubborn fasting blood sugar levels. I recently made another video dedicated entirely to that topic. In it, I explain why your liver produces glucose overnight, why your fasting numbers may rise even when you have not eaten for many hours, and the practical strategies that can help reduce those morning readings naturally. If lowering your fasting blood sugar is one of your biggest goals, I highly recommend watching that video next because it builds directly on everything we discussed today. I think you will find the explanation both surprising and incredibly useful. Thank you for spending this time with me. I appreciate your trust, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.